Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first Coffee with a Cane Live. I am your host, Kelly Sachs. I am an alum from class of 2010, School of Communication, and I'm joined by Dr. Laura Scott, who is a physician. How are you, Laura?
I'm good. How are you, Kelly?
A little cafecito cheers, since this is
Cheers,
Coffee with a Cane.
Oh my gosh, that looks delicious.
What are you drinking?
So mine is, I probably shouldn't call it this, but mine is my quarantine iced coffee. And so I'm stuck home with the kids and they go through so much milk. So I've been trying to preserve our milk stash. So mine is actually sweetened condensed milk with, instant espresso. It's really good.
That sounds amazing. I think I might need to upgrade my cafecito game. So what I'm having is my Nespresso machine, which I'm so thankful for, especially these past 3 weeks, making my own coffee at home. My favorite capsule is the hazelnut capsule, and we are big fans of oat milk here. So I do my cold froth oat milk with my hazelnut coffee over ice, and it is delicious.
That sounds so good. Okay. Cheers.
So can you share your connection with us?
Yeah, so I moved down to Miami probably 4 years ago. So I did medical school at Harvard, but then after medical school, you have to do residency in whatever specialty, you choose. And so my husband, also being a physician, he fell in love with Bascom Palmer. That's, he was interested in ophthalmology. And so that was his top choice. I looked into dermatology program and it was fantastic. So we basically ended up down here for residencies. And then we haven't left yet.
That tends to happen with Miami. People move here and then they kind of never leave.
Yeah, at first you're like, what did I get myself into? And then as the years pass, you're like, I don't know where I would go after this.
Do you have a favorite memory of your time on campus at
Oh boy. I mean, I'd say for me, it's probably a more personal memory in that just the hecticness of running around trying to staff the different clinics I worked at while I was pumping for my youngest daughter. And it's a weird memory to really look on fondly because in the thick of it, it was a stressful time.
Right.
You're trying to get from here to there and make sure your baby's fed with enough milk. But looking back, actually, it was a really fun time. And it was awesome how so many of our coworkers came together to, let me pump in their office. I still remember the program secretary one day letting me pump in her office and going and doing work outside. So that little things like that are the
I love that because that's such a real moment for you. Yeah. And so many, student mothers or working mothers, and the fact that, you felt comfortable doing that there. And it becomes, for me, campus was like my second home, right? Yeah. I did my undergrad there. So you spend so much time as part of the community of the university.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I would say one of my favorite memories is probably the first time I ever went to campus, even though I was born and raised here in Miami. I feel like there was never really another option for me, but the first time I visited campus was actually when I was touring colleges, and I went with my mom, and I remember taking my first steps onto campus and looking around. I'm like, how is this in my backyard? I'm like, I felt so at home, and I'm like, there's no other choice for me. Yeah. Luckily I was accepted after that.
That worked out.
But it was some of the best 4 years of my life, and really our campus is such an oasis, and what other university in the US can say that?
Yeah, no, I'm super jealous of you guys on the main campus because most of my memories are all on the medical campus, which is also beautiful. I've already, you find your different spots. So we have outside of the research quadrangle, I guess you would call it, they have this gorgeous lining of trees and benches and all of that. So, you find your little peaceful places. But yeah, stepping on the undergrad campus, you're like, this is just insane.
An oasis.
I want to sit and look for turtles and
And shout out to all the alumni who are watching right now, who are tuning in to join us. I want to remind everybody that we have Dr. Laura here to answer any questions that you might have, whether it's about, what we're doing to handle our stress. If you're a mom or a dad and you have kids and you need ideas for suggestions of activities to do with them. So make sure you comment below and we'll be answering your questions throughout. So talking about being a mom and kids, you're a mother of soon to be 4.
Yes. I don't want to fall in my chair, but there's definitely
you. How far along are you?
I am Oh gosh, so this is my fourth kid. You stop keeping track. I'm pretty sure I'm 7 months. I'm doing June. I'm doing June.
You're getting there. You're in the home stretch. Have you felt like any, I mean, I'm sure you do feel like stressed out during this time. Like what a time. One of my dearest friends is in her 9th month of pregnancy and it's her first. So this has been such like an uncertain and stressful time. Her husband is actually a nurse at Doctor's Hospital. So it's been, I can't imagine being pregnant right now. How has this experience been
Yeah.
for you?
So I'd say, one, my heart goes out to all the first time moms because, you just don't know what to expect at all. No matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on, I should say, even if it's like a perfect world outside, becoming a parent for the first time is really scary and you don't know what to expect. So there's already so much of this uncertainty surrounding becoming a parent for the first time. And so, of course, with all of the uncertainty with what's going on right now and not knowing about jobs, not knowing about health and safety, and, a lot of the stuff now that's coming out with limiting guests in the delivery room. Women are scared that they're going to have to deliver alone. And
I can't even imagine that.
I hope I don't have to do that, but part of me feels like, I've got this. I've done this 3 times already.
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst, for me, and one of the things I like to remind my pregnant friends and my pregnant followers is that really the most important thing is a healthy baby, an uneventful delivery, and just getting the heck back home. Like, I'm all for hospital deliveries, but really the whole point of it is just getting the baby out safely and getting home and then getting on to the whole parenting part, which is really the hard part. And so even pre-COVID, it was a lot of talk about letting go of your birthing plans and all of these things that people get really hung up on for the delivery. It's the same thing with like planning a wedding, where it's like, okay, you can drive yourself crazy planning a wedding, but really it's the marriage that's the most important. 100%. With children, it's the same thing. You can go crazy thinking about this delivery and having a plan and wanting a water birth and this soundtrack playing, but really like the most important thing is getting that baby out and getting to the actual part of becoming a mom and becoming a parent. And so a lot of my conversations tend to try to ground us back to that reality and to just sort of accept what we can't control, because I think that's a lot of the stress surrounding all of this, whether or not you're expecting or not. So much of this feels like it's out of our control, and so much of it is, but really trying to just readjust our focus onto what we can actually control. So making sure I try not to stress as much, because stress can be just as bad for the baby as any other thing, potentially even getting a cold during this time or whatever it may be. Stress itself we know is bad. And so really just trying to stay calm, which is of course easier said than done. Like, I'm not perfect, I'm stressed like every other hour, it fluctuates. So but just knowing that those are the things that matter the most is helpful for me, and knowing we're not alone. One of my friends on Instagram started a pregnancy during COVID Facebook group, and there's thousands of women on there. So it's just like, it's one of those things that just makes you feel like I'm not in this by myself. I'm not the only one who's going through this, even though so much of what's happening right now because of social distancing makes us feel pretty isolated. It's nice to know that we're not actually going through this alone.
Absolutely. And I hope that that's comforting for any expectant mothers out there to hear it straight from a doctor who's also expecting, and it's in your shoes. I can't speak to that since I'm not a mom. I only have Chloe, who's probably running around here, my 4-legged child. But speaking to that, the stress can definitely make us all sick. We've all seen how stress can manifest itself physically, mentally, and to your point of we can't control what's going on in the outside world. Like, our best plans are always, you never know what's going to happen. I was speaking about this on social media earlier this week about how I've been using exercise as my therapy, because I can't control what's going on in the outside world. I can't control what other people are doing, but I can control what I do. And that is my 1 hour a day that I use. That is my therapy, and it helps clear my mind. And I put all my stress and my anxiety and my fears into that 1 hour workout, and I feel so much infinitely better afterwards. So that's great advice for expectant moms. How old are your kids? You have 3 other kids running around the house.
Yes.
You and your husband are both doctors. So how old are your kids? And
go ahead. My kids are 6, 4, and 2.
Mm,
So yeah, my oldest is in kindergarten, and so she's the one who has probably the most, I wouldn't say rigid, but she's definitely got school assignments right now while school is out. So we're making sure to log her in every day, check for the assignments, and you know, get those things done. And then my other two are in preschool. Um, and it's cute because even their preschool is having Zoom meeting, you know, class meetings, and so they still get to see their teachers every day and have Spanish class and do all that. So it's really nice, but it also is an added thing to do, you know, and it's hard during this time to be productive and to stick to a schedule. Um, but it's really helpful actually to have that schedule.
That's what I've been sharing a lot with my followers as well, that sticking to a schedule has been for me what has kept me sane. You know, continuing my regular routine, making my bed every morning, actually putting clothes on, maybe putting on a little makeup, you don't have to, but making my to-do list every day and just running through that, setting a time for exercise, really sticking to a schedule has helped me just kind of keep it together. And that's what's been working for us here at home. But you know, are you still seeing patients?
Yeah, so we're in an interesting place. My husband is still pretty actively seeing patients, and that's mostly because at Bascom Palmer they have an eye emergency room, so it's not like they can just close all their clinics. They also have an actual ER for eye traumas and things like that that come in that needs to be staffed. And so since he's a fellow there, he basically has a role almost like an attending where he has to staff the ER quite often. He was just on call last night. He should finally be home sometime soon. And so he's there pretty often, but thankfully all of the elective things got shut down because really we want to limit, you know, we can do the same social distancing even in medicine, you know. It's hard for doctors to sort of step back and be like, what I'm doing right now isn't as important, but it's actually a really important sort of conclusion to come to, and to realize the part that we play within this sort of pandemic and the response that we have to it. So for both of my clinics, like I said, I work part-time at and I also work part-time in a private practice office. Both of those clinics closed to seeing live patients. We still have telederm, which has been awesome. So we're pretty much seeing patients through venues like this. And so we can still triage things. And then we have like an emergency clinic open. So if I see somebody who's really got something that I want to see in person, or I want to keep them out of the emergency room and have, you know, be able to take care of it myself, triage those patients, then we can also do that. But for the most part, I am at home, which is weird.
So not only are you 7 months pregnant, you have 3 kids under 6 at home who are also, you're having to help with homeschooling, entertaining your children. Your husband is also a physician. You're seeing patients over telederm. I'm guessing that's keeping you pretty busy.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, again, even like in the pre-pandemic days, you know, it's like you have all these things that are going on, but it's never 100% and it's never 100% of the time. Yeah. And that's what I like to remind people, because I think we not so much idolize, but we see people who are doing a lot of things and saying like, how are they doing this all? Or, you know, what help do they have? And really my reality is that I'm a part-time all of those things, sort of, you know. It's like, yeah. I'm not always, you know, 100% in clinic. I'm not always 100% being a mom. I'm not always 100% being the best wife. You know, you do what you can while you can. And I think that's actually part of what's become a little bit harder during this time, because it's not so easy to compartmentalize those pieces of my life right now. Like, I can't just go to clinic and deal with clinic and take the kids to school and have them there. It's like, no, I'm gonna do clinic sitting here in this spot. I literally sit here. I still toss on my white coat, which I don't know if that's necessary or not, but it at least makes me feel a little bit more official. But it's hard because everything is here, you know. There's no separation anymore, and it's really just all mixing together and trying to find the right balance. But it's not a normal thing, and I think making that very clear to other people, right? Like, we don't really have to figure this out. It feels like we should, because we don't really know how long it's going to last, and I think that's a lot of the stress for most of us. It's like, this is not normal, and it shouldn't be normal, and it shouldn't be normal for long, but how long? And so we are trying to find a way to make it work. But really, this is working from home and being a homeschool parent and, taking care of all these other things. That's not normal, And
I'm so glad you're saying that, because it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to have a bad day. And that's something I've been sharing a lot too. I think it's important to let people know it's okay to experience those feelings and to, feel anxious one second and laughing the other. And then, if you have a bad day, it's okay. Tomorrow, we're all going to wake up and it's a fresh start, and you're going to wake up and do it all over again, and you have another chance. And I saw something on Instagram earlier this week that really resonated. It was like, no, you're not working from home. We're working through a crisis and trying to still work and trying to be a parent or trying to homeschool, right? So for all of those people out there who are struggling or feeling anxious, or the parents, or, so many of my friends have been furloughed from work or laid off because they work in hospitality or the travel industry. So everybody is really has this huge weight on their shoulders. And on top of that, the uncertainty. We're sitting here and we don't know how much longer we have to do this for. So the day to day, that's why I'm so grateful that we have the internet. We're sitting at home, we're able to be home with spending time with our loved ones, and we have these avenues to continue connecting with each other and hopefully brightening people's spirits. Just another reminder, please send through your questions for Dr. Laura while we have her. Now, Dr. Laura, I know that one of your passions is increasing awareness about dermatology issues in general, but particularly for the colored populations. Why are these issues important to you, and where does that passion stem from?
Yeah. So for me, obviously dermatology is what I love. That's what I do. But I wanted to, it's always been really important to me to sort of get across the importance of dermatology, particularly medical dermatology, because a lot of people just don't know about that. And even myself as a medical student, I thought dermatology was just like pimples and Botox, and that's pretty much it. You're like, what else is there? But there's so much. Even now in the COVID response, there's literature coming out about potential rashes that have been associated with this. And a lot of times the skin truly is a window to what's going on inside. And so that for me was my initial interest in dermatology. And then I remember having a patient share her story during medical school, and it was a vitiligo patient, which, if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's a depigmented disease where they basically, you lose your skin color. It's like what Winnie Harlow has. So thankfully to people like her, who are making a little bit more mainstream, people are understanding this skin condition. But it was so powerful to hear this woman talk about struggling with this identity and feeling like she was losing her Blackness, and hearing how her physician was helping her through this, and how her doctor had connected her with, support groups and things like that, was just really, really empowering. So that was probably the first time I really got interested in it from, apart from just the medical standpoint, really just realizing how powerful this part of medicine could be. And then, now I just have so many patients and personal stories that I get all the time from patients who go and, hair loss is a really common issue, particularly in the African American community, but in a lot of communities. But, they'd share their stories of going to the dermatologist, and it's like an old balding guy who basically downplays what's going on with them. And this is something they've been waiting for 6 months. They're probably paying $100 copay or more to see a dermatologist. And then they tell them like, that's nothing, I like the wig you have. Like that was literally things like that get, I hear stories like that, and they make me cringe. And I love all of my dermatology colleagues, so I can't imagine any of them actually saying that, but I know that these stories are very real. And so for me, it became really important to be able to take care of those patients in a way that they knew I understood what they were going through. They knew I really cared about their concerns, and they know that I have things to actually help them. So it's exciting now at UM, we have the skin of color division. And so it's me and a few other dermatologists who, basically see skin of color disorders all day, every day. And it's fantastic.
And that's so wonderful that they have someone like you that they can see you and feel like, wow, she gets me. to that end, on Instagram, you say you started from the bottom, now we're here. Tell us about your experience being a minority and succeeding in medicine.
Yeah. So that line, it's a fun play because that was actually the song that my husband and I walked out to at our wedding. So
I love it.
yeah, that's actually the line from the Drake. You guys, our younger listeners know that that's from a Drake song. And so that was the song that we actually walked out to at our wedding. And it was such an incredible celebration. We had a very small wedding. But it was really like our closest friends and our closest family who really knew where we came from. And where we came from was like nothing, like the bottom, you know. I'm a native of Springfield, Massachusetts, which most people don't recognize, but if you imagine like Overtown, and think of it being outside of Boston, that's pretty much Springfield. And so most people don't make it out of there, and most people who don't end up doing a ton, you know. And so it's insane that we've made it to where we are. We still don't feel like we've totally made it. There's more goals that we have, but in general, being a minority in medicine, I mean, thankfully we're seeing more and more of it, but it speaks to the same thing I was mentioning in dermatology. It's just so important for patients to have providers who look like them. And as much as sometimes I like to convince myself, oh, it's not so important, we can just train people to be better. The studies have shown from patient surveys and sort of patient questionnaires that they really do care if they feel like their doctor understands them or not, if they feel like their doctor, you know, can really listen to them at a different level and advocate for them. So patient advocacy is really important, and you need to understand those populations to be able to advocate for them. You need to really feel them, not just at a academic level, but truly at a personal level, you know. So growing up, I had just so many experiences in healthcare through my own personal struggles in my family that you really, you know, those issues resonate with you, and they'll continue resonating with you throughout your career. And so, yeah.
I mean, representation is so important across all industries. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started doing what I do, because I felt like in the media, there wasn't short, Hispanic, you know, the every girl, that they didn't have a voice. I wanted to work in fashion, and but in medicine, of all things, that's so important that you, again, are represented. You see someone like you. And can you speak to what it's like, more, you know, being a minority, but also being a woman? I know my dermatologist is actually a woman as well. And in discussions with her, she shared with me stories of where, you know, she doesn't feel respected by her peers, or even if they don't do it on purpose, but whereas male doctors get referred to as doctor, she always gets called by her first name because she's a woman.
Yeah, there's always that implicit bias. And I think for me, it's always hard, right? Because you're tiptoeing a very tricky line where, you know, you don't want to always overtly call people out, but you also do, you know, you don't just want to swallow it for the next person to have to hear the same thing either. And so a lot of our medical careers have been figuring out how to, you know, not rock the boat too much, but also get things to change, you know, get people to stop, to realize when they're, you know, having these things. Because I honestly, I truly want to believe that most people are not, you know, they're not ill-intended. They really don't have that ill will. And most people wouldn't say blatantly that they're racist or they're sexist or whatever it may be. But of course, these biases do come out. Mm-hmm. And they're sort of there. We call it implicit bias. And so one of the things that we do in our department, and we like to push along the university, is having implicit bias testing, because we all have biases. I have biases, you know, and it's really helpful to identify what those biases may be in a non-blaming sort of way, and really just get us to be aware of what our biases are and then work past those. The other thing is, I'm already gonna like blank on the saying, but basically it's like you don't need to say all the things you're doing, like just let your success be your actual voice, right? Let what you're doing speak for you. And so a lot of what I've done throughout training and throughout our careers is really just like kicking ass and then just like, you know,
let your work speak for itself, right?
speak for itself, and then people, leave people scratching their heads and being like, wow, how is she doing this? And she's got 3 kids and she's running a blog and she's doing, XYZ or whatever it may be. We need more of that. And so really part of my paying it forward and part of the work that I do is reaching back to those people who are training now and getting them to be doing the same thing. Because the more women we have doing this, like so much of this stuff, the less bias there's gonna be, So
Absolutely.
That's sort of how I approach it.
I love that. Well, we got our first question. For the teens out there watching, is there anything out there as effective as Accutane, but not as dangerous? And this is a question that's coming from Irene.
Yeah, so I think Accutane always gets a bad rap, which drives me crazy because Accutane is an incredible medicine. But we know that it can cause birth defects. And so that's why it has this huge national registration program that requires patients to get lab testing and most importantly pregnancy testing, and to do that monthly while they're on the medicine to make sure they're not having any side effects. But in general, it's such a well-tolerated medicine that it's a hard question to answer generally, because with my patients, whoever shows some hesitancy about Accutane being dangerous or about, not wanting to try Accutane because they've heard of all these horrible effects, a lot of our appointment is spent, at least half hour sitting down, just talking through all the different side effects, because a lot of times these are the same people who are okay with being on an antibiotic long term, which in my mind actually is more dangerous than being on Accutane. So really a lot of it, one is Accutane is really not that dangerous, and it's one of my favorite medicines. And then 2, it really requires an in-person consult because there's different reasons to have acne. And if it's hormonal, which is often the case, so I see a lot of hormonal acne, and it can be in the teens, but that can continue on into the 20s, 30s, and even 40s. There are options other than Accutane that can control the hormones in a little bit of a better fashion and don't have the side effects of Accutane. Really, the biggest side effects of Accutane are dryness. And of course, it can affect your labs, but that's mostly if you're drinking or if you already have, a liver disorder, something like that. So yes, there are options, but really it requires being seen in person. So we decide what type of acne they actually have and whether or not those other options are going to be right for them.
I know earlier this week, I don't like anybody else, I don't know what day it is anymore, but I think it was last week, I was actually doing a live with my dermatologist, and because skincare is like we have all the time in the world, as I've been sharing with my audience, like do all the masks, do all the at-home facials, do the super extra skincare routine right now, but we've all been getting these, what I like to call corona pimples, because we're all so stressed out.
I know.
And we were talking about how stress manifests itself physically in our body earlier in our conversation. So is there anything, we have a question from Montserrat. She says, do you have any recommendations for keeping up with your skincare routine while in quarantine? I miss my facials. I'm with you there.
Lucky girl, getting facials. I think, so it all depends on what type of person you are. And I find that there are 2 types, and there's probably more types, but in my mind, there's really like 2 buckets of quarantine skincare people. Half of them are just like, they just can't do all the things that they normally did because they're not going to work in the morning or whatever it may be. So they're not washing their face every morning and, removing their makeup at night because they're not really putting it on. And so you lose any sense of normalcy, and don't have that anymore. And then the other half of them are really just, looking for things to do because they miss their facials, because they miss, their chemical peels and whatever other upkeep things they were doing. And so that now they're searching for the best at-home peel or the best acid product to use. And so for me, really the most important thing is to continue being gentle with your skin, because I've already seen on telederm consults a few people who have really aggravated issues that they already had that were under decent control, but then because of stress or whatever it may be, now they're reaching to at-home products and doing their own chemical peels at home that are, it's a lot. My advice is to just keep things simple. And again, try to get in a routine where you're washing your face in the morning, So it's like after breakfast or whatever you want to do, before breakfast, after breakfast, brush your teeth, wash your face, put on some moisturizer and sunscreen. Sunscreen is still important, which I'm sure you're going to hear like
a moment to jump in and say, don't forget your sunscreen. We live in South Florida.
Every dermatologist
somewhere other than South Florida, it's so important to wear your sunscreen. We all have windows at home, and we don't realize the amount of indirect light that we get from our windows or even from our computer screens and our cell phones.
Absolutely. And so, windows, it's funny because I have some patients who are like so anti-sunscreen, and these are like my older, skin cancer patients who are like, oh yeah, I drive a truck, but I got that protects you from the sun. I never burn. But it's true. So windows actually do provide UVB protection. And I always remember that B is the burning rays, but they don't provide UVA protection. And UVA is the aging rays, or what causes the wrinkles and the dark spots and things like that, those of us who are trying to keep nice skin, those are the rays that you really care about. So you're not getting protection from the windows. And then just like you said, all of our screens that most of us are spending a lot more time on now, that visible light is turning out to be a big player in hyperpigmentation, particularly the blue light. And so I tend, for my patients, especially ones who have melasma, I'm really driving home the point that they need to be wearing a tinted sunscreen, because tinted sunscreens actually have iron oxides, and that's the ingredient that protects you against visible light. Even your sunscreen actually won't protect you against visible light. So it's really important to have a tinted sunscreen. And that's just one thing that can help you just feel a little bit more put together in the morning too, I like products that are all mixed together. So I pretty much just wash my face in the morning, put on an eye cream, and put in my tinted sunscreen, and that's that. And brush my eyebrows.
I've got my blue light blocking glasses on and my tinted sunscreen on today, so I got both boxes.
Yeah, on top of it.
And like when it comes to trying out, maybe we find ourselves with all these times on our hands, and I've been masking a lot. Going back to what you said about people are kind of overdoing it a little bit. When it comes to skincare, especially, there's so many ingredients in our products that are like hot, trendy right now, like vitamin C, glycolic acid. So what do you say to the women that do want to do like these at-home spa treatments to make sure that they're not overdoing it?
Yeah. So I'm totally okay with it. And honestly, this is a time that it's okay. Even myself, I started a new sunscreen because I figured if it's going to make me break out a little bit, it's okay. I'm going to be
we're home.
Like I'm not seeing anybody. So this is actually the time to try something new. And so I'm totally in agreement with that. But really, the most important thing is to still take things slowly and not try too many new things at once, because if you do get a reaction, you're never going to know which one it was, especially if you're doing, this mask in the morning and then you're applying this new moisturizer at night, and then you're also doing this other peel the following day. You're really not going to know, because typically it takes at least a week for our skin, unless it's an allergic reaction, which can happen pretty quickly. The actual, purging and acne that we may get from our skin disagreeing with products takes at least a week to start, seeing these little bumps pop up. And so really, I just like to tell my patients and followers in general to try to take it slow. And I know it's hard because we have time now, and so you want to try a whole bunch of new things, but at least give it a week of trying something new.
For sure. And for those of us just joining, I want to remind you, please go ahead and use the comment section. We're here with Dr. Laura Scott, who's a physician, and she is answering all of your questions. We have another question now that is from Sylvia Arguelles, and she wants to know, Dr. Laura, what is your experience with spironolactone and adult acne? I hope I said that right.
Yeah, no, you did. I'm very impressed. So that's actually one of those medicines that I was mentioning when we talked about hormonal adult acne. Spironolactone, it's actually a blood pressure medicine, or that's what it was first created for. Okay. It's sort of a crappy blood pressure medicine, though. It turns out it actually does a better job of inhibiting some of the androgens in our body, which, to oversimplify things, just means that it's calming down those overactive hormones that are usually at play in adult hormonal acne. So for me, I really like it. There are a few side effects because it does work a little bit as a blood pressure medicine. So I do usually start at a lower dose. I like my patients to make sure that they're drinking water and things like that, because it can make you a little lightheaded if you're really thin, or because basically it can decrease your blood pressure a little bit. And so I do a lot of counseling around that so that people know what the side effects are. But really, it's a very well tolerated medicine. Most of my patients that I put on it, I'll already have on birth control, or they'll be on something, because the thing that can be most, I'd say, hard for patients to deal with is that it can cause some menstrual abnormalities. So their cycle can be off, they can get spotting or heavier periods. And so really I like to have their period under control before we start that medicine. But it's a great medicine if you truly have hormonal acne. And again, that's the important thing, is really figuring out. That's why I love reading my magazines and things like that, but it's always hard to give this blanket advice, because really the most important thing is getting in to see a dermatologist and really getting an evaluation, because I've had patients who actually have, a different type of sarcoidosis, which is a disease that a lot of people don't even know what it is. They have
myself included.
that are causing bumps on their face, or they have a type of scarring alopecia that also causes facial papules that they've been treating as acne, or they have, what popularly gets called fungal acne. There's just a lot of different things that can cause bumps on the face. And so it's not always hormonal acne, it's not always acne at all. And so really the most important thing is at least one time getting in to see to get evaluated by a dermatologist, and then moving forward.
I feel like also in minority groups, there's a lot of shame associated almost with going to see a dermatologist when it comes to the skin for whatever reason.
Yeah. And that's why so much, a lot of what I'm interested in, when we talked about earlier about my passions in dermatology and just increasing awareness, it's really just normalizing skin issues in general, because I have so many patients who don't come to me until they have scarring acne, and they just said, oh, I just thought it was normal. I thought it was a part of being a teenager, or I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I don't want to, I don't want to bother the dermatologist with this. I can take care of it myself. And that's not the case at all. We see I see such a range of patients from babies with eczema and then, beautiful people like yourself who just come in and they just want what's the right skincare routine for me?
Yeah.
I don't have any issues, but I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. And then all the way to people with severe diseases that require, immunosuppressive medications and infusions and things like that, or cancer surgeries that we do. So there's a whole realm of it, but we love it all. And so really, I'd say make sure that you're seeing a dermatologist. Most of us have websites nowadays, and so our interests will be listed. Mm-hmm. And so most dermatologists will be medical dermatologists, or cosmetic dermatologists, or medical and cosmetic. So it's very easy to see those things nowadays and know that this is going to be a dermatologist who can address my concerns.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, especially, young women, teens, they start getting breakouts and they think that they can handle it just getting something, go to the pharmacy. Oh, well, this acne gel is not working for me, or this face wash. And they keep trying and spending money and trying out products that at the end of the day could be harming them more. So my first recommendation is always go see a dermatologist, because they might be able to diagnose you with something that it was very simple, and there's probably a medication out there that'll fix it, rather than spending so many years suffering. Because luckily for me, I'm very grateful I've never had to suffer through cystic or any really bad acne, just the regular teen stuff. But I know so many people that it becomes this very emotional topic for them, because especially when it's acne on your face, it's your face, right?
Yeah. And you can't hide it, even over makeup and all these. That's what I love about skin in general. You can walk around, I've had patients with internal cancers who come to me, and they're more bothered by what's going on with their skin than they are with their internal cancer. And it's not to say that the skin is more important, but it's harder to hide. All of society can see that, and they really do feel the impacts of that more sometimes than things that are going on internally.
Now, I kind of feel like I know what you're going to say to this question, but Caridad wants to know, what do you recommend for shrinking pores?
Yeah, so let's see if you knew what I was going to say. So the first part of that will be a tiny bit of education, and just to say that pore size in general is genetic. And so really,
That's what I knew you were going to say.
Yeah. So really and that's the scientific answer. That's the true answer. So anything that's like promising to shrink pores is usually like a crock of crap. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to temporarily shrink your pores, but it's just, you can't believe a product that's going to tell you that it really will permanently reduce your pore size or whatever it may be. Now, with that said, we can improve the pore size temporarily, because a lot of times what we're seeing with what look like dilated pores are actually just pores that are filled with more oil than they should be. And along the same lines, we're starting to see the process of some aging, where we're starting to lose collagen, and that loss of collagen support and the loss of elasticity can sort of make it so that our pores are a little bit more sort of stretched out, so to speak. And so those two things we can actually improve. I'd say the one with the most data for it is a retinoid or a retinol. And so those are vitamin A derivatives. We had talked about Accutane before. Accutane is the oral vitamin A option, and retinol or retinoid are the topical options. And so those are probably the best at really shrinking the pores, so to speak. They do an incredible job of not only increasing collagen production, but also decreasing oil production, so that you're really hitting it from both angles and you just get that like perfect glowy look. Now, those of you in my situation with a baby or breastfeeding,
retinol.
Yeah, you can't use retinol or retinoids. And so, and there's some patients who just can't really tolerate it, because retinol can be pretty irritating, especially if you start it too strong and too fast. So I always have specific instructions for starting retinols. But if you are one of those people who either can't use it for safety reasons or can't tolerate it, then I do love things like glycolic acid. That's always another great, it's an alpha hydroxy acid that helps with exfoliation. It also can slightly stimulate collagen production, and it decreases that oil production. So a glycolic acid serum is always a nice one to use as well, and you'll start seeing that glowy skin and a little bit of that pore shrinkage, so to speak.
For sure. And now, since we're all stuck inside, is a great time to both, if you haven't started retinol or a retinoid, but also wear your sunscreen, because it does make your skin extra sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, going back to talking about acne, this is actually something that I was going to ask you. Juan wants to know, do you recommend a plant-based eating, and especially removing dairy products from people's diets to help with skin issues? I will say I'm a huge fan of this. I stay away from dairy like if it is the devil. So I'm drinking oat milk. There's so many great dairy-free options and alternatives now. We only buy vegan cheese. Well, not only, but I've taken Eric, my husband, to the dark side. We usually do vegan cheese at home. We do non-dairy milks. And I feel like over the years that has really helped with my skin. And when I do eat dairy now, I do notice that I get little flare-ups. So is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I would say that it doesn't help everybody, but it certainly, there are a few things that there are data for, and dairy is one of those things. And it's actually more often than not, it's the skim milk and the sort of low fat dairy that tends to have more of a correlation with flaring acne and causing skin problems. So when I see a new acne patient, I do evaluate them based on, what their diet is, what types of supplements they're taking, because whey protein is probably the biggest offender. And that's when I always ask about, particularly with like my young, healthy patients who are just like trying to get right, I like to say. Because oftentimes they're also in the gym and they're also taking like supplements, and they don't realize that that's something that can be contributing to their acne. So the whey protein is a big one. The skim milk and the dairies associated with that do tend to be correlated. And sugar is probably the other really big one that's hard. And it's hard because people like to think of their own personal stories. I think as doctors, we're really trained to look at the larger data sets and to think about the numbers and look at things from a population level. Whereas at an individual level, there's plenty of people who say, well, I eat sugar and I'm fine. I can eat all the ice cream I want and I'm fine. And that's true. That's great for you. But
not for everybody else and not for me.
So not for everybody. So it is important, if you're somebody who doesn't have skin issues, you don't need to go ahead and like change your whole diet trying to be trying to perfect things even more, you're probably not going to get that much of an effect. But if you are somebody who's still struggling with acne, trying to eliminate some of those things actually might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And also, I feel like since we're all stuck at home and focusing more on cooking and eating better, I feel like eating a plant-based diet or eating a cleaner diet even like just helps you overall to feel better and cleaner.
Yeah.
Like our gut health is also so important.
Absolutely. We're getting so much data now about the microbiome, which goes hand in hand, our actual gut microbiome with our skin microbiome and the role that good bacteria are playing on our skin. It's really, really interesting. So there is a lot, there are a lot of good reasons, like you said, to sort of incorporate more and more plants. I think what I try to avoid, maybe because I see kids too, and so I get a lot of parents coming in and bringing kids in, doing these really, really strict elimination diets. And those are the things that I actually try to avoid. And so really we talk about incorporating more good foods in their diet and maybe slowly, removing little things here and there, but not driving yourself crazy. We all just ice cream.
You get your kids to eat greens at home.
Oh gosh. So
especially now when all they want is snacks all the time, I'm sure.
I'd say really like my true answer is you pick and choose your battles. And so I'm not getting them to eat vegetables every day, and that's okay with me. But really it's getting them excited about things. It's really showing them by example. I think that's the biggest thing with parenthood in general. Like we can tell them to do whatever, we can say this is what you should do, but if we're not the ones eating our broccoli, then why do they want to eat their broccoli? So a lot of it really is just about cooking more of it at home and sort of making that the norm, which is hard because I grew up on rice and beans like 6 out of 7 days of the week.
Same.
Sometimes a little like ensalada, but really it's like rice and beans every day.
Yeah.
And so it's really, for us, it's really just leading by example and just trying to show us eating these things. And then of course we always like to give incentives. I think we all work well with rewards. And so my husband is a big dessert person. And so if somebody eats all of XYZ, then they get to help us, pick which dessert we have or whatever it may be. So yeah.
That sounds great to me. I mean, I'm all about the balance. I'll have my green smoothie and then late at night, I'll start picking up my dark chocolate bar. So,
and the kids love gelato. So there's things that we can call them ice cream, but it's like, frozen raspberry yogurt or something, or these like organic freezer pops from Whole Foods. There's things that you can hype up and get them excited about it. And they still don't have to be, they can still be relatively healthier options. So that's a lot of what we do.
Well, on that sweet note, can you let everybody know how we can follow you on social media?
Sure. So you can find me at Laura Scott & Co., which basically stands for me and the whole company, my whole crew. And that's primarily where I post. And I like to do a mix of lifestyle stuff. Right now, it's a lot of just posting what's relevant to us right now, which is a lot of just kids activities and, ideas.
She has the cutest family pics. So whether you're a mom or not, you'll love following her and her family. And especially now, if you are a mom, lots of ideas for activities to do at home with your kids. Thank you so much, Dr. Laura. Thank you to the university community for inviting us on the inaugural Coffee with a Cane. I'm going to remind you that the next one is next Thursday at 2 p.m. We look forward to seeing you here. Again, thanks to all of the alumni watching. It's all about the you. Woo. And you can find me on Instagram at Kelly Sachs as well. Thanks, Dr. Laura. Final coffee cheers.
Cheers.
Be well, everyone.